Hi Megan, I've looked over your lesson plan and here's my feedback. I think this is really well aligned. I think that you're very specific about the goals that you want the students to reach, and then walking them through how to practice it with simple short text, and so it's well scaffolded before you get them to something more complex like the Scarlet Letter, okay? I think there are some pieces that we can really kick up a notch in regards to the direct instruction, and specifically, regarding theme and its application and recognizing it in a text. So I'll show you those places. I'll show you what I mean, okay? All right, I love your students will be able to. They're very nice, very concrete. I think they're putting students' words so that they know when they walk into class what they'll be doing for the day and what the expectation is. I like that a lot. All right. So you went through your hook in class with us, right? And I already kind of gave you some feedback on that in class. And so let's jump into the direct instruction. Okay, so as we've briefly discussed, there is a theme of identity in Scarlet Letter. In order to help us get a better grasp of what it looks like to identify theme, we'll be practicing identifying theme with a worksheet. This got a little confusing because you're saying that a potential theme is identity, but then you're asking them to identify theme. Okay, do you get where I'm going with that? That in and of itself, I had to read that twice and go, oh, she wants them to read the Scarlet Letter and watch for the development of identity as a theme. That got a little confusing. You may want to work in your wording in there. Also, when it comes to theme isn't just going to be one word. You want to think about theme as something more like what the author wants you to understand or how to interact with that word. Look around, grab some different definitions of theme and find one that's going to work for you, but it can't just be one word. For instance, there's this idea of identity, okay? And the theme may be that identity cannot actually change, just as a tiger cannot change its stripes, for example, okay? Or you might have this idea of identity, and then the theme would be something, what is the message about identity? So you could have something like identity can be morphed given cultural situations, or personal choices reveal more about identity than how a person speaks. I mean, I'm just throwing out ideas, right? But you're really going to need to work on changing the wording of this in a little bit because that's kind of confusing. And then you're really going to need to work on the notion of what a theme is. And you'll see how working through that notion in your head is going to change some of your direct instruction here, okay? So you write, we will work through the first example on the worksheet together as I model with help from the students how to look for theme. Read the selection. I'll mention that the main idea seemed to be something about the sisters, and then break it down sentence by sentence as I identify pieces of evidence that support my supposed theme. Now, we really, really need to explode this moment, okay? We need to go a lot deeper and be a lot more specific here in these lesson plans, okay? If you were lesson planning for actual teaching, and so you've had a ton of practice at this, you might write a lesson plan like this, right? Read the passage, discuss sisters, sentence by sentence. But remember the piece that I showed you that one of our student teachers had done before, and how that was a piece that was ready to be taught because she had pre-marked it up. So don't just tell me, I'm going to break it down sentence by sentence. I'm going to identify pieces of evidence that support my supposed theme. Bear with me while I scroll really quick, okay? What I want to see is this passage marked up. What are you going to say? At what moment are you going to say it? Why are you going to say that? Why is that the best piece of evidence, etc.? Okay? I want to see you write. 1. Pause right here. I just have received a piece of information about characterization. I have 2 characters. They're nothing alike. Oh, evidence. Evidence. Oh, okay. Result of evidence. Interesting. So not only do I need to know that they're not alike, but I need to know that that difference led to tensions. Okay, do you see, class, how here in these first 3 sentences, I'm able to summarize and understand how these characters are interacting? I mean, I want it that explicit, right? Because the theme of this text is not about sisters. That is the topic of this. The theme is something that you're going to get from what is this message that this piece is trying to send you about these sisters, right? Sisters, will always be sisters even if they get upset with each other. Something like that. People who appear to have nothing in common on the surface. How about like a really trite one, right? Blood is thicker than water, right? Even though Susie and June were nothing alike, and even though that nothing alikeness led to tension, when things came down to it, they really came together and proved that blood was thicker than water. I'm making these things up, but you get what I'm saying, right? So look at how the difference between what I just did and what you just did, okay? You really want to explode this moment here so that students aren't feeling like reading a passage and finding theme is some magical thing that the teacher's really good at and I don't get it, right? When you pass out and you have them do, have the students explain the separate process and then work through the second example with the students helping decide, okay? So you've got a kid sitting in the corner, he doesn't participate at all. You're like, whatever. You move them on to their independent practice, and the kid goes, I don't get it. You go, what don't you get? The whole thing, I don't get it. How did you know that that was the theme? How did you know that that sentence supported the theme? Right? You need to give them much more strategies instead of just telling me you're going to do this sentence by sentence, okay? Again, themes aren't going to be single words, okay? They're going to be the thoughts about those single words. Think about it. Independent, that's an idea. Independence is a terrible thing to have if it hurts other people. There's a theme, right? Independence should always be held as the best value that a culture can have. That's a theme, okay? So think about how changing those pieces here, changing those pieces here is really going to impact what you're listening for here. When you walk around and check on the groups to make sure that they're understanding, what are you going to do when a kid says, I don't get it? How can you point back to your text and say, okay, look at how I paused every 3 sentences and summarized. Can you do that step for me? Kid does it, can't even do it. Oh, good, you're stuck at summarization. Kid does it and summarizes and then goes, okay, well, what do I do next? Great. Do you notice how I took the summary here and the summary here and tied them together with some inferencing skills? Some what skills? Oh, good, you're stuck at step number 2. See how that goes, and then it puts the work back on the kid. It makes for this repetitive process that you can bring the students through over and over again and drill into them so that when it gets to an independent piece of reading, they can go, oh, first I summarize, then I inference, then I check my inference against my summary, right? It becomes like this machine, so that they can do these things independently. Okay? So think about really exploding those moments and see how that goes for you, all right? Thanks.